Don't read everything. I'm begging you, please don't make this mistake. Woo! Welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Mortals Book Reviews podcast. I'm Kyron, coming here live on the 30th of October 2024 at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And as you might surmise, this is the podcast where I bitch and complain about shit books. No, I don't normally do that, but I will be doing a little bit of that today in this special episode, as I'm not actually reviewing a book. It's kind of a book review of the books that I haven't reviewed, if you want to put it that way. So I have been collecting a list of books of probably over the last 6 months in particular, but some of these are ones that I remember having in my possession a couple of years ago and then going, nah, I'm not going to do this. So it's not an exhaustive list of every book that I've never read or that I've started. In particular, these are books that I've started but have not finished. And the mistake, hint, hint, is to not read every book that you start, because you're going to have a bad time if you do that. I believe it's a foolish errand, a foolish pursuit to try and do that. So I'm going to list off a couple of the reasons why this might happen. So give you some warning signs perhaps to look out for that you're not enjoying, reasons why you wouldn't. And also, I think this is just a good, if you're enjoying these book reviews that Juan and I post on this channel, I think it is a useful thing to realize, okay, what are some books that, we might be interested in but didn't actually get through. And then, of course, I will probably have to address at some point, why am I not reading a lot of current authors? Why am I doing a disservice to the fantasy and the rom-com literature out there, which I usually try and avoid? So I don't have to, I don't want to talk too badly about all of these things because, some of it's a reflection of my personality, some of it's a reflection of the times and things like this, but just take this all with a grain of salt, and we're going to just jump into it right now. So I've got 3 in particular sections here of things to look out for, and also this is why I have not done a review of it. So let's jump on to the first one, which I have labeled structure and style. And I think this is probably the biggest and probably more interesting reason why you would not see book reviews on this channel of these particular books. And I'll list them out here. Well, how should I do this? I'll talk about it in this way. So these structures and styles I usually find I will drop because they're philosophical / nonsensical. So they typically are writing in a style which is very dense, very hard to pass through, or the actual structure of the book is the style of literature of either jumping back and forth, or what they're trying to do is weird. So here, we'll jump into one of the first ones here, Pragmatism by William James. I gave this a solid shot recently, and I just couldn't get through the wording of it. It was the way he was talking about things was just a bit too what's the word, like highfalutin. It's too much above my head, and it lacked a grounding to it. And this is going to be a similar thing that you'll encounter with the rest of these. So Pragmatism by William James, which is a shame because it's a philosophical book that I thought would be up my alley, which is pragmatism, the pragmatic way, effective philosophy that we talk about on the Mere Mortals is all about, well, not all about, but being pragmatic, of doing things in the actual world, of not just living in ideas, but actually bringing it down into solid reality. And it's like, but can you actually do this? Will this actually work? And that is not what pragmatism by William James is about. It's funnily enough not pragmatic in terms of, it doesn't really give you a great philosophy on terms of how to live and do things. So yeah, watch out for that. Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard. This is a book which is kind of well known, probably in popularity because the inventors of the Matrix movies, the Wachowski brothers at the time, I think made everyone in this in the movie before they were filming read this book. And I can see why. I can also see it's a shame because the core concept of the book I find actually really interesting, which is there's a layer of reality above what we have. Sorry, it's not reality. There's a layer, a mystifying, a level above what we have, and it is kind of less fine grained than the base one. But if you keep going up and keep referring down, you can lose track of this base one, and these become the thing that we have, the thing that we think only exists. And this is what you see in the Matrix movies. Everyone is trapped in the Matrix without realizing there is a more real level of reality. And they had these different sections of it related to, I think it was like nuclear war, and things like this. And it had the potential. It had the potential to be so good, because it is a really interesting idea. But just the way that they had worded this, it's very just, it feels like someone who is intentionally making things difficult to sound smart. That's all I was taking from this book. And if I listened to a book review summary of it, perhaps on YouTube or something like this, I went, oh, okay, wow, that's really interesting. I'd love to know more about this. And then when I try and read it, it's trash. Unfortunately, we have another trash, not trash book, another book I'm not going to review on these channels, which was also recommended by the Wachowski brothers, or forced to read for the actors and people working on the Matrix movie, the first one. But we'll get into that. That's jumping ahead of ourselves. We'll get to that soon. Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche. I wanted to give Nietzsche another shot. I read Beyond Good and Evil. I did actually do a review of that on this channel. And once again, it's a book where you need to either have 170 IQ to really pass out the meaning that he's writing within these words. But once again, it's not a clear and simple definition. You kind of need to be like Jordan Peterson, where you'll have a one sentence from Nietzsche, and then you just dive into it crazy and deconstruct it for hours on end. If you're doing it to try and get some insights at I don't know what my IQ is, let's say somewhere between 100 and 130, I think is generally the range for people who've graduated from university, then you're going to struggle to really get this, I think. Or maybe it's just his style, I don't know. But Thus Spoke Zarathustra, not a fan of. Warrant and Proper Function, Alvin Plantinga. Honestly, I can't even remember what this is about. It's once again, it's one of those idea about an idea sort of thing, and very abstract, which abstract ideas are hard to comprehend anyway. If you're written in a style or a structure like this book was, not so good. Areopagitica by John Milton. This one I think I'm putting more down to the style of language. So John Milton, can't remember when he was born. I'll see if I can look it up quickly while we're talking here. He was an old English guy from 1608 to 1674. There we go. So he wrote in the style of English in those days, and that style of English nowadays is very hard to comprehend unless you have a translation who's doing crazy alterations to it, even though it's the same language. And yeah, that was the main reason I couldn't get through this. And Areopagitica was, I think, honestly, it was probably tending a bit more towards politics than I would have liked, and so hence not reading. Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. What the hell can you say about this book other than I think people who say this is the best book of all time are absolutely batshit insane. That's the only way I can put this. If you deconstruct this and read this, it literally makes no sense. It's probably, I'd love to know if he was a troll in real life, because this feels like a book that a troll would write. They got a bit of fame for writing some other books, and then they're like, I'm going to write this, pretend it's the greatest, hardest thing I've ever worked on, that every line in this book makes sense and has meaning, and then refuse to elaborate on it and explain it. And yeah, it's just, I cannot emphasize just how stupid this book is. I read only the first page of it, actually at Peter the Slav's house when I was in Canada, who was a supporter of this show. And he we had some drinks. I read out the first page. It actually made a bit more sense when I tried to speak in a Scottish or an Irish accent, because I don't have the technique to really alternate between those two or differentiate between those two. I haven't practiced that enough. And good Lord, this book is just trash. Wow. James Joyce, Finnegan's Wake. What a waste of time. Understanding Media by Marshall McLuhan. Once again, this was an interesting book in the sense that he was deconstructing media, of how media alternates or distorts things, that changes stuff, and that this is where the book, the famous line, the medium is the message, came from, where he explains it's not necessarily about the content that you find within the television or radio. It's more about the transmission, how it actually gets to you, because it is coming to you via long wave or short form, or it has these costs or these restrictions. It forces the type of content that will actually be shown on this, which is quite an interesting concept. I did enjoy that. Once again, though, just a bit too wordy, a bit too talking about random stuff that didn't really seem to have any connection to it. If I've looked up a couple of videos on him on YouTube, talking and explaining, and this is his style as well. He talks around things. He doesn't answer. If you ask him a question, he doesn't answer it directly. He talks everywhere other than the question, which is meant to be an answer. I don't know. Not so good. Crystallizing Public Opinion, Edward Bernays, basically the same thing. And The Technological Society by Jacques Ellul. I got probably about 30%. This is the one I got through the most out of all of these listed here. And it was, once again, it's an interesting idea that he had on what is technique and things like this, but just the structure, the style of that it was written, I just couldn't get it through. I had to drop it, which is a real shame, because I did actually take some extensive notes on this. If I go through here, some things about it was rather brash and arrogant at times with some of his statements. Good Lord, yeah, you could see him just saying something as if it was the absolute truth and there was no debating it. If you don't see it this way, it is mere idealism. Usually on a poorly developed point that is surely open to questioning. Sources of his reasoning are weak. JUNF has shown admirably, blah, 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 blah. A quote. Followed up by poor assumptions, states it is only possible to feed 5 billion people through forced labor, and uses expert congresses as his proof. Obviously, we know that is not true, so if that's not true, which is one of his statements of this is undeniable fact, then we've got this. Seems to underestimate just how powerful technique is in defying expectations. Ironic for someone so worried about it. He's got some solid points in there. Second and third order effects of technique drive us ever further into order and require additional technique on top of this. And this is just me talking here, industrialization needs human automatons, which needs cities, which needs entertainment, which needs TVs, which needs media, which needs advertising, which needs capitalism, which needs propaganda, which needs a bigger state, which needs etc., etc., etc. I thought that was interesting. His course on concept was interesting, but as the way it was written, not so good. So we're going to jump onto, I suppose, the next section here. So once again, none of these books I'm particularly faulting for the idea. There's nothing I've read in these which was like repugnant to me. It was just the way they were communicating it, in the language that they wrote in, and the style of the book made me go, I can't get through this. I'm not going to do this. Hence, no reviews of it. I see we got some live questions popping in as well. I will address those at the end if you're willing to stick around for another 15 minutes. Please call me. So let's jump on to the next one, which is the length. And this one's pretty easy. It's either just too short or too long. So I have read A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, Brachiochacomachia, I don't know how to pronounce this, by Homer, or it could have been by Lucian, or it could have been by Progressive Halicarnassus, or it could have been by unknown. I'm not sure. It's hard to know who actually wrote that book, which was essentially a funny little satire of Ulysses, but conducted by frogs and and Mice. It was actually pretty funny. On the Decay of the Art of Lying by Mark Twain, one of my favorite authors, and Drowning by Yu Dafu. All of those I read, but all of them probably took me about, I don't know, less than an hour to get through, and they're just not that interesting in terms of the it's not worth doing a full book review of them. It would be hard to, I'd be really stretching to draw out some themes other than saying like, this book was fun and interesting. Drowning Yu Dafu, even though it's about suicide, it's just so short. It's just so short that I don't really see the point of doing it. So here they are. Good things. Give them a read. I enjoyed them, but I'm not doing a full book review on them. And then there's been ones where I've gotten the book and I've gone, I'm not going to attempt this. Les Miserables. I remember having that. I sat it on my bedside table, and it was just honestly too daunting. I just could not. This was particularly when I was doing 2 book reviews a week, and I'm like, bruh, I'm going to be reading this for so long. I feel like long books are good for periods of my life where I'm I don't know, I'm perhaps not demotivated, but I just have a lot of time and I'm not actively going after things. And books like this, Les Miserables, In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust, which I don't know how many volumes that has, but exceedingly long. When it's getting to above 1,000 pages, I really have to be motivated, and there has to be something special about it to make me read it. I have read some long books before, such as, the classic would be some of Tolstoy's books, Anna Karenina. I always hate that last name of hers. War and Peace by him as well. I have read those in the past. I remember they took me 2 to 3 months, I think, to get through in total. This was when my reading was probably a little bit less. Good books. Am I going to review them? No. And these ones, I might get to it at some point, but these are books that I've physically had in my possession and gone, yeah, nah, I'm not gonna attempt this. I just don't feel like dedicating that much time to a book. In the future, perhaps, but at this time, no. So that's also, I think, a reason why you might not see some reviews on this, and why you might drop a book. I haven't really gotten into the core concepts, but I'll get to these towards the end. Once again, I'm just getting into some explaining of books that I've had and stopped. So the last section that I had here was just the content. And so this is where I am actually making some judgments on the actual things written within the book, and I've dropped it in those terms. So I've broke this down into a couple of subsections here. So political/angry. So Inventing Reality, the Politics of News Media by Michael Parenti. It was pretty much all about politics, politics and media, and there was just a lot of anger in the book. I don't know how to describe it. It's like calling names, I guess, or just this seething fury. And I don't really want to read a book about someone who's just super angry like that about a topic that I don't think should justify that amount of anger into it. Something like this. The Communist Manifesto also fit into this, by Karl Marx and F. Engels. That one I did take some notes on. Let me go to those quickly. So I wrote, obvious from the get-go that it is rooted in anger. A deep loathing is apparent, and you don't hear much about how the working class are actually good people, just how bad the bourgeoisie is. If I had to guess, I imagine they were disgusted by the idiocy of the proles, as they had never once called for somebody to be treated as an individual. And I think it's rather amusing how they were talking about free trade and measurable monetary value taking over religious, emotional, and archaic morals as a bad thing. It's got to be insane. It's like dragging barbarian China, as they put it, into the world economy is a good thing. But they were saying, no, it's better they be separated, and their system is the better one, even though people are living in abject misery. Some of the terms were outdated and perhaps just didn't have too much weight behind them. I never did a good grasp of what they mean by the means of production. They kept on talking about it, but it was like, I don't know what this exactly means. And it seems they were scared of globalism, scared of technological innovation, and wanted to return what I believe is an imaginary communistic past. So private property is a pretty old concept, but they were saying about how this was the woes of all evils and things like this. They weren't totally wrong with identifying a problem: unequal wealth distribution, causing people to suffer by comparison, obscene galas while a family is starving, but they're just on the wrong side of the solution. So I have written notes on some of these books, but it was just too hard to get through. It's like, God, these people are so angry, just anger, and without any helpful. I wanted to read this as like a historical document because it did influence a lot of, the 19th century, but and the 20th century, but yeah, geez, just trying to get through it. I probably got 20%. I'm like, I can't do this. These ones, in-depth or just boring. So the Franco-German War of 1870 to 1871 by Helmuth von Moltke. Good Lord, this was just a guy talking about, these armies moved in this direction because we thought this. I actually wanted to know a bit more about this because I had read, I'm going to forget the guy. It'll come to me. It was a war book that I have reviewed on this channel by a French author whose name is just escaping me at this moment. In any case, I wanted to read this to kind of compare the notes of that with book versus this one of an actual general in that war, and it was so boring. Don't read it. It's real unless you're a war fanatic who loves just hearing about literal movements of troops, not even the overall picture, but just these troops moved from here to here, these conditions were this, we heard this person did this, so we decided to do this. That's literally all it is. Another very in-depth book is Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos. Fantastic speaker. Highly recommend his YouTube channel and his Patreon if you want to know more about Bitcoin and you're a beginner. He has really good stuff. But this book is very technical in nature. It's meant for coders, and it is meant to dive deep into like the inner workings of it. What is SHA-256? What are elliptic curves? How do you write code for this? What sort of timestamps do you need to be, etc., etc. Super in depth. I wanted to give it a try. I gave it a try, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is about what I thought this book would be. So if it's too in depth or boring, i.e. the content is like that. And then we had two more books, which were /science and non-science. One of these was Out of Control by Kevin Kelly. This was the other book I referenced that the Wachowski brothers had recommended forced people to read for the Matrix movie. And, I think it was just out of date, to be honest. It was talking about all of these things that you could do to, biohack your health, to, improve your eyes, or like the future is going to be green with these plants, and it's very biology focused. And it just felt out of date. Everything about it was just like, maybe this was cutting edge at the time, but when you look at it 20 plus years later, it's just a bit, okay. I didn't take much out of it personally. And then the other was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this is just getting too close into the woo-woo. Manifestation, spirits, positivity, things like this. I think there's some value in this. If you go into one of the recent episodes of The Mere Mortals, Manifesting Your Positivity, or something like that, we had a bit of a deep dive into, these types of people, this manifestation, positivity, vibrations, enhancing your future, all this sort of stuff. It's probably even more it's more compelling when they're saying it out loud, because at least you get a taste of their positivity and get to see them. But in book form, man, I just found this really boring. Really boring. So those were the main sections there. So a little summary here for everyone. That was books that this is more just for informational purposes of books that I'm not going to review on this channel, even though I did read a little bit of them. And this is just my guidelines, I guess. Things to look out for when you're reading a book, and why I advocate you're stopping. Number one, there's a ridiculous numbers of books in this world, and they're just going to keep getting larger and larger. And especially if you read more modern stuff, you're just going to be overwhelmed. So no matter how fast you read, even though there's people out in this world who read, 300 books a year plus, they're not going to even make a dent in the overall literature that is being produced and has ever been produced. You simply cannot read all the books that are being published. So you're going to have to do some sort of filtering mechanism. Now, that filtering mechanism can come before and after choosing a book. I personally have a bit of a running list of just things when I hear people talk about it and I like that person and they reference this book. I also just go to, general crowdsourcing wisdom of the crowds. What are some classic books that are really valuable? Very rarely do I read new ones. That's probably another video of why I do that. But even with that filtering mechanism beforehand, things will slip through the cracks which just don't fit you. You won't like the style. You're going to find yourself bored while reading it. And I just think it's an absolute waste of time for this, whatever reason is in your head, call it perfectionism, call it, being the sort of person who finishes what they start. If you do this, you are going to have a bad time and you are going to waste many hours of your life on a book that is not worthwhile. Juan, my co-host, has done this in the past. I even had this little thing in the past, but you're just going to have to go at some point. I'm wasting my time and I could be reading another good book with this time. So I just call on you, please don't waste your time. If you're in that mentality, find a way to get out of it. Whatever justification you have to do, it's just I'm begging you. It's such a waste of time. I do advocate for grinding through a bit though. So all of these books that I mentioned, I would have read at least 10% of it. And I feel if an author hasn't captured you by that point, they don't deserve your attention. There are some things which will perhaps get you going a little bit. Which one of these was I was talking about? Jacques Ellul, The Technological Society. There was something in there that captured me for a little bit, and I'm like, I'll give it a bit more. So I gave it to 20%. I'm like, I'll give it a little bit more, and I got to 30%, and that's when I had to drop out. So, it's particularly for me who's doing a book review channel, where there's an incentive to completely finish a book to be able to then do a book review of it. Even I have to go, nah, you know what? It's worth dropping this now. So, because I'm not gonna, it's not worth me sacrificing all of my time and energy just to be able to put a book review out of something I didn't like. And that's the other thing. I don't like particularly doing book reviews of books I didn't enjoy. Sometimes I'll do it because I think it's useful, such as I haven't actually done it on this channel, but I have read by Hitler, the Mein Kampf. I have read that before. I might even read that in German when I'm practicing my German more. It's a trash book. It's a really boring, crappy book, but it did shape a lot of history or explain a lot of history as well, and so I thought it was important to read that. And so I will do that every now and then, but yeah, it's just not going to be something I will do in the future. So hopefully you got some value from this, that you enjoyed this section here of all of these books that I have read, but I have started. I have not read fully, and also will not be doing full book reviews on this channel. So talking about value, I would really love it if you could help share this podcast with someone who has a reading assignment perhaps, or perhaps a fellow book lover, or someone who is thinking about someone who reads through books entirely, even if they hate them. Give them a shout out and say like, hey, here's a couple of reasons why you might not want to do that. So that's how you can help support this podcast. I would also love your book recommendations at home. This is also another way that I get books to read. So if you have a suggestion, please reach out to the Mere Mortals book reviews or the Mere Mortals podcast in general, because that is both Juan and I, and we see those messages. Particularly jumping into our Discord, it would be great, and leaving a recommendation there or something. And then finally, you can help support this podcast monetarily, because it does take time, energy, and brain power to do all of these things. So there's a PayPal link down below. You could also go to meremortalspodcast.com/support, and I've got a section there on boostergrams and things that we get in of people who are helping to support us monetarily directly in the podcasting apps. Now, there is something I have been remiss in doing, which was Cole actually sent in a boostergram quite a while ago, and so this was on the 21st of September, and I don't think I ever read it out. And so he said, in quotation marks, "I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere. Chiron down." 1111 sats sent using Fountain. That is indeed a good quote. I should do that all the time. And so that was from the book Capitães da Areia by Jorge Amado. And have I thought of that book yet? That author is just escaping me. Oh god, that's so annoying. It's from the author of Therese Requiem. So it's Émile Zola. Okay, it's Émile Zola is that French book, and I'm just looking up the Émile Zola War, Franco-Prussian War. This will do it. Come on. The Debacle. Yes, The Debacle. Okay, there we go. Excellent. So we have it. The Debacle by Émile Zola was that French war book I was talking about before. So we're going to end it here, and this is just a call out, a reminder that I do these live, and so we actually have a live message here from none other than Cole McCormick, and he asked, "Will you ever read Shakespeare?" That's going to be a tough one, Cole. I had a strong dislike of Shakespeare when I was forced to read him in high school. I don't think forcing kids to read books is a good idea, especially in or like telling them you have to read this book. I think if they want to read different types, that's probably better. But that's diving into the whole education system, and I'm not going to touch that topic. Will I ever read him again? Yeah, I might give him a shot. The books that I always had from him were these, explanation type ones. I think they were probably more suited for kids, to be honest, because they had just the style they were written out. They always had these kind of quick notes, summary at the end, all this sort of stuff. I don't think I ever read it in a proper, nicely formatted book. So I could see myself giving it a shot. It's not on my list at the current moment, so this is probably something more for, I'll say like 5 to 10 years time, perhaps. Yeah, I think I'll give him another shot at some point, but not anytime soon. So if you do want to join in live, I do these 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Wednesday, which is about 1 a.m. UTC 0. So wherever you are in the world on a Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, if you've got a plus time zone, add your plus onto 1 a.m. on Wednesday. If you're a minus, take it away from that, and then that is when we are going live. I do this live on YouTube and then also directly in the podcasting apps. So if you want a message that will go out to you, if you subscribe to somewhere like Fountain, Podcast Guru, Podverse, I believe you have the ability to have notifications pop up on your phone saying, "Hey, the Mere Models is going live." Actually, I think YouTube does that as well. I personally don't ever do that because I don't like getting those notifications. But yeah, what's coming up in the future? Well, I actually lied in the last book review. So I actually said that I would touch upon the topic of translations, and especially that one about Edward Burton and the, what's it called? The 1001 Nights, 1001 Arabian Nights. Can't even remember that. And there was also a version of that related to the Kama Sutra by, I think it was William Lane. William something. And I'm not going to do that now. That is a big topic in and of itself. So I will keep that for another special episode for the future. What is my intention? I do plan to do just more book reviews from now on for a little bit, probably for a month, until maybe adding in I think maybe once a month I'll do these kind of like special episodes, something like that. And yeah, you let me know at home. Did you get some value from this? Did you enjoy the special episode? Would you like to hear more of these things, which aren't exactly a book review, but it's on the topic of books? Would love to know that. In terms of things I'm actually reading, almost finished East of Eden by my favorite, could be my favorite author now, John Steinbeck. and Calendar of Wisdom by Leo Tolstoy. And there's a whole bunch of others coming up. So yeah, look forward to that. Juan is also doing his, which aren't live, but he puts out on a Saturday. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I really do appreciate your time, your energy, and I really hope you got some value from this. Until the next time. Ciao for now. Kyron out.